For my last cultural literacy project, I decided to do another medical one, and you can roll your eyes all you want, but I think it's fascinating. Blood types and bone marrow transplants. So there are kind of four main groups of blood with those letters, and those represent different antigens in the body, and antigens are what trigger immune responses within our bodies. And so those are different ones. And you probably know that they usually have negative or plus signs next to them, and that represents the absence or presence of another antigen. And so when you're donating blood, you have to be sure that you match it, because if you don't, the body thinks it's like a foreign invader and it will reject that transplant because it doesn't have those antigens to match. So you can kind of see the chart here, how type O can just go to all of them. And AB is kind of selfish. It just goes straight across, right to AB. And I just thought this was interesting to put up the different ethnicities tend to have different, some have more than others, like the different types of blood. So I thought it was interesting to kind of see. And so these would be more needed in blood banks and things because very little of the population have them. I guess you could say both. The more popular ones would be needed too. I just thought it was interesting. So you're B positive. I remember that. And so you're only 9%.
I clearly have Asian blood.
Yeah.
Got a little Asian in me. You know what I mean.
So how do we get our blood types? Well, it's just genetics, basically, the same way we have our eye color and hair color and all of that. It's passed down through our genes of what our different blood types could be. So you can kind of see there what the possibilities are based on what your parents' blood types are. So just like the blood transplants, the bone marrow transplants, you have to be a match as well. And bone marrow is like a fatty substance inside of our bones that creates stem cells. And stem cells are found in certain bones and also in umbilical cords as well, as you've probably heard those commercials, like cord bank and all of that. And so there are 3 types of bone marrow transplants. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but this is from yourself. And they use your own stem cells. The middle one there is used from a donor. And the third one is from umbilical cords using those stem cells. Before, I thought the process of bone marrow transplants was really interesting because I never knew what the process was. You always assume with a transplant there's a surgery involved and, something's taken out and just put in somebody else. And the donor usually goes in for surgery under anesthesia, and they take a hollow needle and go into your hip bone and go down into the bone and draw out the bone marrow from your back here in your hips. And to give it to the patient is simply through an IV. So I thought that was really interesting because usually you think that they both have to be put under for some reason, but it's just kind of like getting blood, basically. Typically, patients have to go through very harsh chemotherapy before they receive their transplants. It depends on why they need the transplant, but they basically have to wipe out their immune system before they can put these new stem cells in so that it can start their immune system back up again to be able to create those new cells correctly. So it's quite a process for both the donor and the patient, but I thought the process was quite Interesting. Oh, I forgot that I had a separate slide for this. So you can kind of see the different layers of the bone there. And I didn't want to give you actual pictures of the surgery because I thought you might not like that.
Thank you.
It's basically the needle in the back and it draws out that marrow. And then it's kind of a waiting game afterwards to see if the...
Yeah. Is it specifically bones? Is there a specific bone that you take the marrow from, or is it just in general any bone?
They typically take it from the back of the hip bone right here, because that's where a lot of stem cells are. Some bones really, I don't know if some don't have any or just not as much, but that's where they tend to take it from. That's a pretty standard to do it from.
Yep.
I need to speak because it's being recorded and I just forgot and I'm sorry. Sorry. Does it hurt? Does the procedure hurt?
They're put under. They're put under for it, and afterwards it would take, they said, about 4 to 6 weeks to kind of, for their bodies to kind of rebuild what they've lost. And they might be kind of sore, and I mean, you just had a giant needle stabbed
into your bones.
So you might, I was reading some of the side effects, and it's mostly just like you're uncomfortable for a while. You might, it just takes you a little bit. But to save somebody's life, I'd say that's a pretty good thing to do that for. So luckily, you're asleep through the process, from what I've heard most of the time. But then it's the waiting game to see if the body accepts the transplant. And they said that being the same ethnicity for the donor is gives it a better chance of like being accepted into the body, a better chance of a match, like as close as you can get. Oh, the very end.
Aww.
I was sad when I typed this out. Like, oh, that's the last one.
Good job, you